From the world of AV programming and control with James King, I'm Steve Greenblatt, and this is Ask the Programmer. James, how are you today? It's good to be back for another great episode.
Oh, I'm doing good, Steve. It's always great to be back. And how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to us chatting a bit. We've had a series of episodes recently where we've had some guests, and they're always fun. It's always good for us to have a little bit of time that we can talk through a topic. And the one we had planned for today is residential versus commercial programming. I think it's something that could get some clarification, and everybody seems to choose their side there. But I, you and I had talked a little bit about this, so I'll let you kind of kick it off, and just talk about what are some of the things that you've been hearing, and why is this a topic that's important to talk about?
Why it's the important topic to talk about is we're seeing a increase of residential and commercial combining. Uh, we're finding products that you would normally find in residential making their way into commercial, and vice versa, commercial products making their way into residential. I think this has always happened, but I think COVID has one brought it to the light, and two has sped it up. I mean, before COVID, you probably had CEOs or presidents or the big wigs who might have high end homes and have residential equipment in it, and then they would come in their office and want the same kind of interaction, or vice versa. But now you with since COVID, you have regular boots on the ground folks who are working from home, who are wanting the same experience that they get in the office now at home. So they're improving their video quality, their mic quality, and we got past that. Good enough is good enough.
I think I agree with you. I think that that's been happening for quite some time. I would even um, venture to say that back to when I first started doing this uh, almost 30 years ago, it's been a weird dynamic between if I could do this at home, why can't I do it in the office, and vice versa. And I recently heard somebody saying that commercial was the one that was really setting the pace for quite some time, and people wanted to be able to have better technology at home to keep up with what they were exposed to in the office, although it was in very special, very well outfitted, probably high end rooms. Now we're seeing technology being so pervasive at home that everybody is used to having things at their fingertips, and we're now seeing the consumer grade equipment really setting the pace and defining what that user experience needs to be, which then goes up to the commercial side. And as you said too, there is a difference in equipment, and there's so many ways that we could talk about that. In fact, that might even be its own show in itself. But I do have to note that we spoke a little bit about this with Rich Fragoza back in episode 95. So if you want to check that out a little bit too. But the it is I would say that the user experience is something that is also needs to come into play when you're looking at these two options.
I agree. User experience has to come in, but the hardest thing to get to the users to explain the difference is the experiences are going to be different. For example, at a residential, you're only focusing on that one family. It could be a large family, it could be a small family, how whatever mix is, but it's tailored to their need. If their display doesn't work, only they are impacted. When you go into a corporate or higher education, you're taking that one family experience and you're blowing it up to hundreds, and they all have what different needs. They all have different experience that they're looking for. And us commercial programmers need to make it adapted to everybody. And it's hard to do that when, like I said, the home is so tailored, it's so unique to that one person. No two homes are alike, but in higher ed, all our classrooms are alike because they have to give the same kind of experience across the building. So it's challenging to get that across the users. I hear it all the time, like you were just saying, oh, I can do this at home. Why can't I do it here? And it's explaining that to them is first off, at home, like, yeah, if your TV goes out, only you are impacted. Here, if a display in a classroom goes out, you have 30 plus students who are affected, faculty infected, plus everyone else who comes in after them. So it's a larger impact. And then there's also the financial aspect of it, which might bored some of our listeners who are programmers, but I always chop it up as every person in the room, that's a dollar figure. Students are paying to be there. At home, yeah, you pay for the service, your cable goes out, you're frustrated, but like you as a consumer, technically is not lose money, but students are paying to be educated. If the equipment's out and the faculty member cannot educate it, that's money that they're wasting, that they're not getting back. So there's a dollar figure tied to ours.
I think if you even go further with it, and this we've actually spoken with manufacturers about it, the level of operation is not as stringent in a residential application. Although people want it to work, they're used to, I have to reset something or something, it didn't work this time, or let me do that again. And I'm not saying that that's good, and I'm not saying that's the way it should be, but in commercial, when it doesn't work, you lose confidence, and there's a lot less tolerance for error and for systems not being reliable, especially with people that are temperamental or tentative to use it to begin with. The last thing you need is for them to not have a consistent operation or not be able to feel confident in it.
100%. And that's insane. We, especially in higher ed, and of course, going back to that, because it's my bread and butter there, but the higher ed is, as I tell my team, is our faculty are not calling us to say hi and things are going well. They're calling us because something is not going well and they're in front of their class and they have we say they have egg on their face. They look bad. Something's not working. So their courses aren't going to be in a great mood when they have to call us to come bail them out because they're supposed to be the leader, the power figure in front of the class, and now they are not that because the equipment's not working.
100%. I'm sure the expectation is it's going to work, and not working once is actually failure, not just a hiccup.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It leads to distrust in the IT, AV team, and the technology in the building. I
Yeah.
remember in my old job where we got a request that came in for a ticket saying nothing in the room was working. And I go down that room, everything's, I cannot get any kind of hiccup in the room. It's working beautifully. I was like, all right, well, they're complaining nothing's working. So let me reach out and get more detail. So I reach out to the faculty member. I'm like, hey, we can't replicate any issues. Can you give more detail? And their response was, oh, I haven't been to the room yet. I assume it didn't work.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, no, our rooms work. And it did irk me wrong. But then again, you guys think about it, is it wasn't that it must not have been their first time to a higher ed classroom. They had to had experience where the equipment didn't work for them to have that notion in their mind already.
I unfortunately feel like that is more common than we would like. So that's unfortunate, and that's a shame. The other thing we probably should talk about is the fact that in a commercial setting, you're talking about a lot of rooms, a lot of systems, and you need to have a way of managing these products, and monitoring the systems, because you're essentially running a help desk, as you're talking about, in somebody's home. Although I'm sure that they want it to work all the time, and you can do remote monitoring. The response time does not have to be as great. It's not, you're not, you're likely not doing as much proactive support, and trying and testing the system, and trying to find failures before the users do. So the equipment that's in those systems needs to be able to provide that type of feedback, and be able to be set up so that you can do firmware updates, you can do some type of remote diagnostics, you can do load patches overnight. There has to be some infrastructure set up, and more so in a commercial than a residential system. Although there are big residential systems, it in the commercial side, it's run more like an IT solution, I would imagine.
Yes, I agree. And also, I to take a little side path here, and not to get too far away from programming, but like a residential is, yeah, it's money. Clients are paying to have these things upgraded, change at their own dime. And businesses and corporations, like, they're up fronting that money, but they don't, unfortunately, they kind of think about, like, I kind of chop this up because I used to have this conversation when I handle security cameras. And everyone's like, they'll look at a business security camera and they're like, well, my iPhone does better video than that. And I'm like, yeah, but I bet you that business put those cameras in when they first opened, their capital budget, put those cameras in, and then I never thought about them again. And now you're 10 years down the road where your iPhone, you update, what, every 2 years? So, of course, your iPhones are going to be a better camera than things that have been put in years ago. And that's the problem, like we do in corporations. These are products that the business doesn't think about anymore because, oh, I put my money up front. I had the latest and greatest. Technology change. I mean, how often are people swapping out their home TV because, we went from CRTs to flat panels. We went from 480 to 720 to 1080 to 4K to 8K, whatever. People are putting home theaters, and now are putting OLED screens in. Businesses can't change that quickly. Technology are changing, and yeah, we can probably throw that in our homes, but we can't do that on a large scale like we can for our business.
I think those are really valid points, and it's actually one of the things that I was going to talk about too. Is I know from my perspective that working in a commercial system, I have to appeal to the masses, like you talked about earlier, versus working in a residential system, I have to appeal to a person. And whether what the solution is consistent with another one, or best practice, or maybe not ideal, if they're paying, they want it the way they want it. And there's a big difference there. I think some programmers have the patience, and will do the hand holding, and will provide that white glove service like Rich Fragoza to figure that out, and sit and be involved. In fact, to your point about products changing, a lot of times residential system solutions just don't end. They just continue to evolve, and uh, they almost are open ended, because they will just be updated and change, and have new products in and out over time. Whereas commercial systems, you would replace a whole system typically when it's the end of life cycle, like you mentioned.
Yeah. And I don't want our listeners sitting here thinking, I don't know if we're coming across this way, but that we think a commercial is better than resi. Because there are things that I wish that I've seen from resi programmers, resi folks that would apply to commercial. Like resi programmers or resi's installers and all that, as you said, is a very white glove service. It's like I am addressing Steve's needs now. You're attentive to the user, you listen to them, you're like even when you go into their homes, you know, you're putting booties on, you're taking care of this is someone's personal space. So you do very delicate and all that stuff. Where you see these corporate businesses, they come in, they're like, "Oh, it's down. We're just going to make a mess out of this." You got papers everywhere, people wearing dirty boot, like, and it's like, no, you don't do that in a residential, but they get away with it in a commercial. So I want to say, I wish we can bring more of that mindset into the corporate world.
It requires a lot more finesse, and working in somebody's house is a lot more personal, and running wires in different houses require different ways, different amounts of creativity and different techniques, and being able to keep things hidden. There's a lot of more art, I think, involved in residential than commercial, plus the aesthetics too of the solution are a lot more meaningful. The last thing I wanted to wrap up with, because I think it's important, is one of the things that I think doesn't get talked about enough is that the user is still the same. So whether they're using something at work or they're using it at home, and I think that as we find ourselves catering to a younger generation, we're going to find that they're going to have different tendencies. And and I personally have seen that people's patience has really dwindled. Everybody wants quick response. Everybody wants things to work the first time and if it's not easy, they're just not going to do it. So I just think that we're going to need to think about that in the new iteration of user experience, and see how that personal side, and which I guess will uh, originate from residential, will then find itself being prevalent in commercial, because there's going to be a lot of a change in the tendency of the user.
I think that's a great point. Is because I even know it, me personally, I'm this way too, and I see a lot of younger generations are this way too. Is that you got to hook me right away? Like even when I will see a video online that was like explaining things, if the first like 2 3 seconds I'm not getting what you're trying to get, I'm moving on. You lost me. And that's the same thing going to be with our control system. If I have to hit 5, 10, 20 different buttons, you lost me. I'm done. I'm moving on. You're gone. And that's how residential is. They want to simplify. And that what we got to do in commercial as well. We can't have these huge pages and flips and all that stuff. Yes, we might have more equipment. We might have more steps that need to be taken, but us programmers need to capture that user right away that they can do what they need to do.
And I think the days of telling people the way it should be from our perspective as professionals are probably going to be gone very soon, whereas they're going to tell us the way it should be, and we're going to work with them to implement it.
100%.
But that's probably a good place for us to wrap this one. But always a good conversation, and I enjoy us when we get the opportunity to talk through these types of topics. Listeners, please let us know what you think, and if you want to join in on this conversation, we're trying to talk about all the things that pertain to programming, but also the outreach of the AV world. So hopefully you found this to be useful. James, how can people get in touch with you? And is there any last words that you wanted to share?
No last words. I think this was a great topic, good episode. I hope our listeners enjoyed it. You can find me on, I guess we should start saying X, not Twitter, at AV_James King. You can find me on LinkedIn, semi active there, not too much. I believe this episode will be out before. I'm hopefully I think if we did it correctly. So, a little plug, I will be co-hosting the book club for Wave It. So swing over and register for that and check that out because that's going to be a fun. We're talking about the person you mean to be, how good people overcome bias by Dolly Chugg. And great book, outstanding book. Highly recommend it. And again, you'll find me if you Google me.
And is that going to be happening in October of 2023?
October 5th,
Great,
2023. Yeah.
great. And belated congratulations on you being selected in the commercial integrator 40 under 40. We should
Thank
have
you. And
started with that.
that's all right. Thank you. And yes, it's great to be highlighted on there. But another thing is showing the power, the move of higher education. We had 4 outstanding people, yes, myself included on that, but we had 3 other outstanding higher ed folks in there, Brit, Kiasha, and or Camille. Sorry, I messed up her name. I apologize. And Hunter. They all are doing amazing stuff. And then also that this year was a split 50-50 of male and female. There's tons of great folks out there. So again, thank you, Dan and Commercial Integrator, and keep up the good work. And thank you, Steve.
Sure. And we had a member of our team on 40 under 40, so Victoria Rook. So appreciate that. And that was, I'm always a big fan of that group and like seeing those who are in that fraternity or to really do great things in this industry. So I'm excited and I appreciate Dan and Commercial Integrator putting that together. And if you haven't heard, Dan was on recent episodes, so please check those out. That's Dan Farisi. And for me, you can reach me at Steve Greenblatt on social media. You can also reach my company, Control Concepts, at controlconcepts.net. Also do a podcast on aviation called The State of Control. Check that out as well. And that's a monthly show and has a similar topic. So if you're like this, hopefully you will like that. But please do let us know what you think about this show. Let us know if you want to be part of the conversation. If you have guests or recommendations for topics, please reach out to us in all of the formats we mentioned. We're on YouTube. We're on your favorite podcast player. A rating, review, and a share would be greatly appreciated. And we really like to hear from you. So please reach out to us. And with that, this has been Ask the Programmer.